Hey, friends, welcome back to Better Together, real talk for people building real businesses. I'm your host, Kelly Sundsvold, along with Shawn Sundsvold, and today we're diving into a conversation that blends purpose, community, and entrepreneurship in a really, really meaningful way. Our guest today is Maggie Langley, and she's the CEO of Office Hound's social media agency, where she's been helping small businesses grow online since 2009. But what really caught my attention about Maggie is her work with the Addiction Recovery Place podcast and her work championing the work of addiction professionals around the world. Today, we're talking about how Maggie and her team are using digital storytelling and connection to make an impact in the recovery space and what it looks like to build something meaningful around such an important mission. So, let's kick it off. Maggie, welcome to Better Together. I'm so glad you're here.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. All right. Well, let's just dive right in and tell us about Addiction Recovery Place and how did it start and what inspired you to do this? Yeah.
Sure.
Tell us all about it.
Well, I originally started our marketing agency when I lived in the UK back in 2009. And my husband at the time, his whole career, he'd worked in social care, worked with adults with learning disability. Later in his career, he'd specialized in working in addiction treatment, especially with justice-involved individuals. He did a bunch of really cool projects. Like he was involved with the first ever in the UK place that had sharps or needle places in a public place. Like they had them in parks in a place where there was having difficulty. So he worked in a joint kind of working project to make that. It was the first time it had been done. And, he did things like they have a program where they would work in the prisons or when people were first arrested to link them up with support. So he's just kind of done some really interesting and cool things in that space. And he's, managed a addiction treatment center there. And so his whole kind of career had been service and people oriented. And when we moved from the UK to Iowa, where I'm from, he joined me in the business and we started running it together. And we've done that for a long time. And then, we were just talking and we're like, he just wanted to reconnect kind of with that sense of, that purpose in his work. Social media can be a little bit shallow at times, so he, we just started talking about it and we thought, boy, this would be a really interesting thing to see if we can combine our marketing skills with in knowing how hard of work that is too, because unfortunately people don't make it sometimes. It's a really challenging, the professionals that dedicate their lives to that. Well, one, they're saving lives. They're amazing people, but they're also doing it under difficult circumstances. And, sometimes people don't make it and it's a hard work.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to champion the work of those people. And so we decided to start the Addiction Recovery Place podcast. And our original goal in January, we thought, well, if we can do one podcast a month, we didn't know whether it was going to be like anyone was going to say yes or whether we didn't know what was going to happen. And we thought, well, if we can do one podcast a month, that's our goal for the year. We'll feel happy with that. We'll build some relationships, get to know some stuff over here in the States because all of his experiences in the UK. And we ended up doing, well, we ended up changing our goal partway through because it was so well received we decided we were going to do one from every state in the country. And
Wow.
So we didn't make it. We didn't quite make it in a year, but we did get 50 podcast episodes recorded in a year.
Good for you.
But we didn't get every state. So it took us until maybe March of the next year because we had certain states that we just couldn't, we were just having trouble getting, but we managed to fulfill that, probably about March the following year. So about a year and 3 months. So that was kind of our journey into podcasting, but we've met so many great people and built some really cool relationships with people. So it's been a very exciting project. And, one, we're really glad that we stuck with it. There were times where you were producing the podcast, we had I did the editing and publishing, and there was a time where we had them we were recording them way faster than I could edit them. So I had like
Oh,
a big old
yeah.
backlog there for a while.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And
Yeah,
then you
it's
have to focus on your clients, like the main job,
Yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah, this is 100% side project, kind of a work of love, really. So it was, yeah, and we also started, like, my husband joined like the biggest kind of national organization, and he's actually like on the board for our local state, like now, like, so because he's got the experience and stuff, and it's kind of nice sometimes having an outsider that participates in the board because they're so busy. And he's got the experience and the know-how. So we've really it's been a great way for us to kind of network into with those professionals. And we're also able to help them, with our skills. It's kind of they're a different type of professional in that they're so mission focused that it's been, they're fun to connect with. And, maybe tech isn't always their favorite
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah.
They'd rather be talking face to face with people, helping people. So it's been fun to be part of that.
That's awesome. I'm curious, being in England for a long time, in London, and coming over here, what gaps did you see in the addiction recovery community that really felt like this platform would be a good fit?
Yeah, well, we were surprised when we started looking that there's not a ton of digital content for professionals. We're really thrilled to see that there's tons and tons of people that are in recovery themselves that have created podcasts that are that's a really special and neat community of what's going on there. There's lots of people in recovery that are helping other people. They have their own podcasts, they have their own YouTube channels. They're inspiring other people to kind of stay the course and stay safe and stay sober. But there's not a lot of great content for addiction professionals. Now, there's tons of great educational content. There's one, they're often always going, "Oh, I need more letters after my name. I'm going to study something else," or they're getting their continuing education
Yeah.
credits, what they have to do. And which is fantastic to see. And there's definitely that kind of content, lots of that. And but even like some of the bigger educators, because they're already doing that content, they're maybe not doing as much, or what the content that's created is usually really specialized on one thing. So it might be, even if it's an association, it might be a medicated assisted treatment. Like maybe it's they only do that. And if they do have content, it's only focused on that. Whereas what we did, because of the state goal, it widened things out. And we spoke with everyone from people we had like a recent graduate that was just brand new in the field, versus like we had a couple people, like we had one woman that was, she was retirement age, but still working. We had totally different experience levels, qualifications. We had CEOs of, like, there was a place in Colorado that was they have people that fly in on private jets up to the mountains and stuff. Like, so
Wow.
we went from
Yeah.
a place like that's like the luxury end, I guess, of addiction
Hmm.
treatment, to we also did like the real gritty nonprofits that work with people, that are homeless or unhoused. It is more the term now.
Mhm.
So it's like having that wide range, but then it was also, we opened it up. We didn't have an agenda. We let them speak about what they care about. And we also always asked, like, what was kind of, if there was anything special going on in their state. So we are also getting a snapshot of what's happening in the country at any given time. And what I feel really proud of is we had a very experienced, some of the people were really experienced and top of their game, like have been to the White House. We had at least 2 people that have been to the White House
Wow.
to advise and things. And one of the women from there had said that, and she is involved with research, and she said, "What you're doing is essentially research." And I felt so proud of my husband. He's the host. I was just the background lady, but that kind of snapshot, of the country is a rare thing. And he got invited to speak to a big conference as well, because of it was kind of unusual to have this content. So it's definitely led to some really fun opportunities and unexpected, really.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. It's almost, it seems like you've carved yourself out a very, very unique space, in
Yeah.
that community.
Yes. Yeah. And it's a one, like me with as a marketer, I couldn't have had those conversations because I haven't
Mm-hmm.
walked in their shoes. Whereas my husband has that experience, so he was able to have those conversations. He knows the questions to ask. So it was kind of a, when you've been in business for a long time, it's nice as well to have a new project where you really, like, for the two of us, I felt like we really found a way to like accentuate both of our skills, like doing this. Like, I love
Mm-hmm.
being behind the scenes doing that. That's fun for me, like learning about editing and getting that stuff going, making all those decisions. That was a fun new project for me. But for my husband, being able to reconnect with people and people like that he were more like the people he worked with was, it's just a nice thing. Like, sometimes it finally just clicks into place about, hey, this
Mm-hmm.
feels like home. This is what we should be doing. So we're really pleased with it. And it's I definitely recommend the benefits you get from those conversations, giving people the chance to speak about what they love doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really special thing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I love that you work with your husband and you've really like taken an experience that he's had and your skill set really combined it to be able to help others, which kind of leads me to my next question. We're both in the marketing space. Obviously social media platforms are really public. Podcast platforms go out to the world. Um, and there can be a lot of really sensitive topics within addiction and recovery. How do you approach that content and connection and really keeping the brand humanized, but in a way that feels supportive but not performative or, hurts, their confidentiality or anything along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that part was really easy for my husband. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to do it, but because he's worked in that industry, that was very natural and easy for him. We always did a intro call with people, so he would kind of learn about what their real interests are. Because it's he would kind of see what lights him up and make sure he's asking questions about that. And the confidentiality piece, I mean, that's a piece that is also on the professionals. They should know that they're not to be talking about specifics
Yes,
of clients and things, and
right.
that kind of goes with the territory. I mean, this is a very sensitive group. It was one of the questions he asked a lot was about most people was about stigma and their take on that, because um, it's a real problem in people accessing support and things. So he kind of knew those questions to ask, and it gave people the opportunity. Like, there was a lot of really interesting stuff that came out. Like, for example, there's fentanyl in cannabis, like, that's bought from the street now, like, in multiple states, which we were surprised
So
to learn.
scary.
It is very scary. And people aren't expecting it, and just all sorts of, like, that's kind of, I think, why the one of the guests had mentioned that it was a little bit like research, because you found out how many states were talking about it, and it doesn't mean it wasn't in the other states, but they chose to talk about it because it was of concern to them, and we didn't prompt them,
Right.
or ask them that specific question. And there were other trends like that emerged. So and it is a very sensitive topic. One of the challenging things we discovered and hadn't thought about when we started was the advertising, because we're looking to, that's something we're exploring this year, how you get around the advertising piece, because although we're for education for other professionals so they can learn from each other, the things that they talk about, you have to be real careful on the social platforms and the advertising piece,
Yeah.
because you've had human trafficking and
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of really nefarious things that have happened because of marketers, unfortunately. There's been terrible marketing firms that have come up and set up, like, kind of lead gen type of websites in the past, and it's gone to Congress. I actually read some of the information from the congressional transcript, but it was really shocking the way that people they were basically, it was like body brokering. They were taking leads, and people were kind of almost being like sold to addiction treatment centers, like, or they'd be transported,
Wow.
and then then they just turf them out. Like, so they'd get them to go in, so they got the insurance money, and then they get turfed out. It was really, some of the stuff is really shocking and upsetting to hear about,
Yeah.
but to hear that kind of marketing in this space was happening it's really kind of depressing to hear that people could be so callous.
Yeah.
And think about the privacy, as well, the sensitivity that should be afforded to these people when they contact and you're just being seen as dollar signs is really tragic.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't. That's just horrible. I didn't know that was happening, and I definitely will check it out after this, because that's crazy. It's almost predatory for people who are kind of at the bottom and need help just getting out of the pit of addiction. And I can't imagine. So on that, like, do you feel like social media kind of plays a role in breaking that stigma, helping bring awareness to issues like this, maybe even helping professionals collaborate together?
Absolutely. One of the cool things that one of our guests talked about was there's like a program called I think it's Recover Out Loud. And, that's kind of encouraging people to, to talk about their journeys, helping to inspire people. And as I mentioned earlier, I think a lot of the recovery community, there's a lot of people that are trying to champion and lift other people up. And, it's comes with its challenges, though, because you also, like, I always feel, sometimes I feel, this is my own personal opinion, but I'm sometimes nervous for people because the stigma, we're not there where that stigma has been eradicated. So you do have to be careful about your employment. You might have trouble because of employment related things. If people are judgmental, there was interesting, we had an HR lady on as well that talked about how the American Disabilities Act, people that are in recovery, that are currently having treatment, that they actually, that they are protected in their workplace under the ADA. So that was some interesting new stuff that I guess other people maybe knew about it. I didn't personally know about it.
Yeah.
So I think that, yeah, definitely the stigma is tricky, but there's a lot of cool things that we've seen happening. We had a guy, there's a guest from Minneapolis who he's retired, and he'd previously, I think he'd worked in like he'd done volunteering previously, and he and a buddy of his decided ended up contacting. So it's like, just as that's kind of how social and community based things can really go a long way. So they contacted, remember when we always used to have newspaper dispensers everywhere because,
Yes.
prior to all this stuff, you'd go see when the movies are, you got to go get your
Yes.
newspaper.
Yeah.
And there used to be tons of them everywhere in cities. And he contacted an old, or a newspaper and said, do you have any of these old dispensers around that aren't being used? And they said, yeah, we got tons of them sitting in our warehouse or wherever it was. And so he made a deal with them, and he'd buy them for super cheap, and he'd wrap them and he turned them into Save a Life stations. So they became dispensers for like fentanyl testing strips, and for
Wow.
Narcan, which is what kind of helps save lives when people are overdosing. And then he'd find, and he just does that piece, but then he connects with other people in his community. So he'll connect with other nonprofits who are already doing that work, and they manage the replacement of the materials within the box. So, those are the kinds of things that, it can be a little bit depressing sometimes. Like when you hear about how, we're still having all these overdose deaths, there's a lot of stuff that's really sad and tragic about it. But then you see like some of these innovative projects that people are doing, community-based projects. And there's it's a little side project, but one of the ladies that she had her personal story featured in the New York Times, and she talks about that story, her personal story, on our podcast. But she'd been incarcerated and then came out and things, and she's now running managing a nonprofit. And she, like, just one of my favorite things as a lover of books is they did have a real simple program where they give books to families. Like if they come and they get a free meal, And then they also have like someone that facilitates like kind of a literacy program there
Wow.
and it's and
Wow.
the whole thing is just, it's very low cost to do. They just donate a few books. They and actually I think that there's a program that specifically does that. So they don't even pay. It's not like they have to raise funds even for that piece, but it's just such a simple community-led thing. And social media, that's the way you get people to know about it, is you're
Yeah.
marketing to those places. And that's kind of how now we don't have those community bulletin boards and all of that kind of stuff. It's all digital. So, social media plays that role in connecting people to resources, which life-saving resources, and
Yeah.
even for treatment centers, having your marketing and your posts there. I mean, it's quite powerful to think that one post seen at the right time, if that's the thing that makes you pick up the phone and call, that can save your life. And so
Yeah.
it's quite a powerful thing that,
Yeah.
our marketing, when it can be life-saving, if it's, when you got a good message and you're supporting people who are doing good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Like, that's so awesome. And it ties right into our next question. Like, our podcast is all about like better together and connectivity and community. And so like you've told a bunch of stories of how like the collaboration and has really affected everything. Do you have any other stories where it's like, this one small thing of like a small connection turned into something where it was just amazing and blew up in a way that you never expected?
Yeah, I would say one thing that was kind of fun was we met one of our guests is from Iowa, actually, that we've actually become good friends with now. He's a trans man and does a lot of work with LGBTQ related advocacy, especially within the substance use disorder field. And it's very tricky. I mean, you imagine if, a lot of times, sometimes treatment involves like group work. So it's very difficult because they're maybe they have to feel like they've got to put their guard up. I mean, these were kind of some interesting things that I learned about some of the challenges that different communities face in accessing treatment. But we had another guest who has developed his own kind of treatment method. And, it just so happened that like one of our, the guests that I mentioned had said, "Oh, I'd heard about that and I'm really interested in that." And he was also looking to serve that community because he felt like his new treatment method that he had developed himself was a good match. And so we made an email introduction to the two of them,
Hmm.
and now they do workshops and they do stuff together. So it's so cool to have been able to be that connector, and also knowing that it's helping to serve a community that that definitely needs and deserves to be kind of seen and have their unique needs met. So
Yeah.
it was exciting to see that they've collaborated together.
Like what level does like trying to figure out how to ask this question, but like, how like vulnerability, right? Like someone coming to one of these programs or coming on your podcast and talking through some of that. How has that helped as you've grown this program? How has it helped with people's vulnerability coming in to talk and to share their experiences and do some of that?
I mean, I guess for them, most all the people, they're all professionals. I mean, I would say out of the people that we've interviewed, the majority, definitely, I'd say upwards of 75% are in recovery themselves. So, but and are now professionals. And I think that for them, because they're such people, their whole profession is being good communicators and supporting other people. I think that being vulnerable is a little bit maybe easier for them than the average person, also with their mental health backgrounds and the studying that they've done. So it was interesting. We don't ask people about their own. We never, like Chris never asked people to share their personal story, but they often do because they want to show. That to me I feel like it was one of the most inspiring things, is to hear people that are saying, that they've overdosed themselves multiple times. They tell their stories, and now they're like they're CEO of a addiction treatment center, or they're doing these amazing things. And, like I said, a couple of them, have been to the White House. And when you kind of hear the talent and the support and the amazing give back that they're doing for their communities, it really heightens, to me, it heightens that kind of feeling that we need to be faster and be doing more to make sure that we're not losing so many people to overdose, because these are people, some of them, I mean, they're the things that they have overcome. I mean, it does make you feel like, like sometimes when you're doing the podcast editing, for me, you think, oh, geez, here I'm making a drama in my own little world about, oh, I'm not getting my to-do list done. Or you have these kind of little small kind of challenges that we all have in our businesses. And, it gives you a perspective on what people can achieve,
Yeah.
what you can
Yeah.
overcome, but most importantly, how precious these people's lives are. And we need to make sure that we're keeping these talented people, and we're there's getting them, there's some great programs, like they're returning people to work, also giving people a chance too. Like, don't assume, it's the stigma piece, don't assume because somebody has had that experience that they're not going to be able to recover from it and be amazing. And in fact, the incredible thing I've seen, so many of them are such hard workers. You would not believe how many of them, they keep going back to school. They keep getting higher and higher at qualifications so they can better serve their community. They're doing a million projects, a lot of them. And it really
So
shows what people can do. It's cool.
yeah, it's almost like they're
Yeah.
seeing all the opportunities that are now available to them, which is amazing.
Yes. And
Yeah.
they care so much about helping other people have that, and it's
Mhm.
a fun thing. I feel really privileged that we have been able to kind of help champion their work, because it's some of the stories are just absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. And the courage that it takes for these people to stand up and say, I need help, and it's nice. I love how you and your husband are a beacon of hope for these people. And like you said previously, even if it just hits the social media post, the clip, the podcast, whatever, hits at just the right time, hopefully it can inspire someone to make that change and to get help. What advice would you give them on where to start?
I would say that it helps if you start with something that you have that connection with. I think that you're going to have trouble building that real community and connection, if you don't really have the spark for the thing, like
Mm.
whatever that niche is, whatever that whatever kind of community you're trying to build. I mean, I would say that it makes sense to choose something that either that you're willing. You don't have to know everything, because you're bringing people together. So like that's you don't have, like, for me as well, like I have no experience in this field at all, but I connect with some of the people as well. We do marketing for one of the associations out in Washington State, and so I connect with these people in that way. So you don't have to know everything, but I do think that you have to have, if you're gonna inspire people to want to connect and be part of a community, they have to feel your genuine interest. You're not building it just for the sake of that there's not a self-interest. It's kind of more about the whole versus yourself. And if you can't do that, then it's probably not gonna click into place. I think you need that genuine just interest and desire to help the people that you're bringing together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that personal connection to something is really important, right? Like when you're passionate about something, it motivates you and it drives you, like the amount of work and effort that you're going to put into it, it's so much higher and so much more, and like the value that you get out of it personally, it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a big difference for sure.
It definitely does. So, looking ahead, we're almost at the end of 2025, rolling ahead a little bit to 2026. What's next for Addiction Recovery Place? And, what are you excited about that you guys are doing in the coming year?
Well, I think that this year we are slowing down our recording schedule because it was pretty intense. Like previously, we've got a wait list for recording our podcast, which we're pleased about. So gonna continue. We're gonna continue with that. We had such a busy time that first year just with production that now we're kind of building we're going to focus more on building audience for us. Fortunately, because of the nature of the content, it's all pretty evergreen stuff and of interest. I mean, we're going to that's our main focus is we're going to be like making sure that more people know about it, more professionals know about it. That's going to be the main thing for sure. And it's quite a I think that it's quite a good thing. We really want to see some of the students who are currently in substance use disorder that are currently studying to get their qualifications. I think it's a really because there's such a wide breadth of like it kind of shows you how many different ways you can specialize and it gives you a vision. They're talking about their real life work. So I think it's a really nice place for students to hear because they can kind of see, oh, I feel like, I really want to be in this type of workplace. It kind of helps them imagine what their career is going to be like. So we're looking to maybe connect with some professors and do that. And maybe have some of them on as guests as well, because we had a researcher from Australia who gave us a really interesting interview. So we want a little more of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So are you
It's
are
like
you getting listeners from other countries too as part of this?
Yeah, we're getting listeners. I mean, I have to say, like, we're real specialized. It's really niche, addiction professionals. So, we're not huge numbers, but yeah, we've definitely getting listeners from all over, which is neat.
Well, definitely wishing you luck in 2026. And if you are listening and struggling with addiction, how do people find you? What is the best way for people to find your podcast information?
Well, if I'll just say, if it's someone that's currently has an addiction, then I think that it's the SAMHSA website, which I think is SAMSHA. That is a place where that's a government place, like it has like safe recommendations and it helps you to find places. So I would say first of all that's where you want to go for for connecting with treatment centers. For the addiction professionals, we're just addictionrecoveryplace.com, and it's Addiction Recovery Place podcast. So we're on all the different podcast places. So, and we have a, as a marketer, you got to say, we got a newsletter, sign up. So if you sign up for that, you get the first episode. It just starts with episode 1 and then you get a new episode every 2 weeks. So, we try to get so people can hopefully listen to a bunch of them.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, if you're listening, Maggie's a wealth of resources with the addiction recovery. And I just thank you so much for coming on this podcast, raising awareness for not only Addiction Recovery Place, but just addiction in general. We do have a problem in this country, and it's unfortunate, and too many deaths related to fentanyl. Yeah. I just appreciate you and the mission that you and your husband are doing and the journey that you guys have been on. Thank you so much for being on this podcast. I appreciate this. And I hope this is a blessing to other people who are listening who may be struggling as well.
Thank you so much for having me.